Hello and welcome to a brand new webinar. It's so lovely to be able to speak to you today, and what a joyous webinar it should be, because it's all about what I do and what I know a lot of people are really interested in, which is being a pit lane reporter. We have a wonderful panel lined up for you. I'll introduce them in just a second, but as ever, if you do want to get in touch, then you can do. The email address is info@mmw2020@gmail.com. I know it just rolls off the tongue. And if you want to use a hashtag, you can do. That is mmw2021. And thanks to our sponsors, as ever, New Channel Media, video production around motorsport. They enable us to get these webinars on the telly, or on your telly, on your computer, on your tablet, wherever you are watching. So without further ado, let's get on and introduce you to our panel. And if by magic, they should all appear. Hurrah!
Do a dance.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
As I said, we have an amazing panel lined up for you, a very strong female-led panel as well. So let's go around the room and introduce you to everybody in no particular order, just because you're on my left. I'll start with Louise Goodman. Lou, tell us, who are you? And what do you do, and how did you get to be where you are?
I am Louise Goodman, and I am my pit lane reporting has all been for ITV. So I started out, we're working with them on Formula One when ITV took over the contract from the BBC back in the day. And now I cover the British Touring Car Championship with them. So unlike a lot of other people, I came from a background in motorsport. I was working for one of the teams, as in, that's, you know, when I say I come, obviously you all have a background in motorsport. That sounds really disrespectful, but I was plucked from obscurity. I was Eddie Jordan's press officer, and ITV approached me and said, fancy giving this a go, when they were starting the Formula One contract. So that was kind of my entree into the world of running up and down the pit lane with a microphone.
Amazing. We're going to find out much more about you and just have a good old chat in a couple of moments, but let's whiz around the room. And next up, it's Louise Beckett. Hi, Louise.
Hello. Well, I've worked in all sorts of motorsport over the years, from single-seaters, rally, touring cars, but since 2012, I've been the pit reporter for the World Endurance Championship. And I should also say I'm now the co-founder of Loudspeaker Agency. Yes. And for me, I actually started a bit like Louise in production. So I worked my way through television before I actually got to front of camera.
Good stuff, thanks. Next, let's go to Natalie Pinkham. Hey.
Hello, coming to you from sunny West London. Isn't it a glorious day, everybody? And it's lovely to see you girls today. I love a bit of girl power in the paddock. So yes, I work in Formula One and have done for the last 10 years, actually 11 years, because before that I was with BBC 5 Live before going across to Sky Sports when they got the rights in 2012. Much like the Loos, that sounds a bit dodgy. I started as a runner in television and then became a researcher and an assistant producer before getting my opportunity in poker, would you believe it? And then finally got my break into Formula One through 5 Live. And I love it, every single minute of it. And it's I'm in great company with you lot.
I have to say, I'm always ever so grateful to Natalie for leaving her role at BBC Radio 5 Live, because it meant I got her role at BBC Radio 5 Live. So it's a very small world, isn't it? We'll talk about that in just a moment.
Very.
But last but not least, welcome to the panel, Nicki Shields.
Thank you very much. And yeah, it's so lovely to be together here with all of you guys as well. And I am the pit lane reporter for Formula E. Now, obviously, I started at the beginning of Formula E. Formula E didn't exist before I got my job, and that was in 2014. So it was a slightly bizarre sort of story. I mean, I had worked a little bit in motorsport, right? Mainly doing bits for Goodwood. I'd done a couple of sort of sports car races, but I didn't have a huge amount of experience, definitely not really as a pit lane reporter. I was actually hosting a show that was around science and sustainability, and I was doing Escape to the Country, all very different. But motorsport had always been just a passion and a hobby, and I didn't really honestly envisage kind of working in it. I just thought that was what I did at the weekends. I watched the racing with my dad. We went to tracks and that was fun. I didn't even appreciate that I could work in it. Unless you're a racing driver. And then I was doing a show on this part of this sustainability series on the future of electric cars. I heard about Formula E. I laughed at it and said, good luck, that's not going to work, because the cars are going to be quiet, not a chance. And then actually I sort of went away, thought about it and was like, actually, this does sound very interesting. It kind of combines my two passions around the sort of science and sustainability side, but also around racing. And then and that was it. The rest is history, as they say, and I've been doing it ever since. Now we're in our 7th season, which is obviously not very long in the history of motorsport, but it seems like it's been quite a long time in the history of Formula E.
I think the challenge of any motorsport is getting apparently over the first 3 years. And if you can survive the first 3 years of a new championship, you can last.
Fingers crossed.
And I just want to remind everybody watching, if you have a look down at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A function, and this is all about answering your questions. So if you have anything on your mind, anything you'd like to know, anything you'd like to ask any of us in particular, then fire away, because we want to be here to try and help you achieve your dreams. And Louise Goodman, let's come to you first, because so many people at the moment seem to want to aspire to work in motorsport. What would be, I suppose, your piece of advice if someone came up to you and said, okay, I really want to do what you do?
I think there's a couple of things that I always say to people. It's a question that I and probably everybody else who's here today gets asked on a regular basis. The first thing I say to them is, you've got to bear in mind that yes, you've got to love motorsport, but you're not going in there as a fan. You're going in there to work. So that's really important, because you've got to be, you want to be taken seriously with what you're doing. So as such, you've got to prove that you're going to sort of put the hard work in. And it is hard graft. I'm sure we'd all agree. It's a very sociable environment to work in, but it's a very antisocial job. You're working long hours, you're working weekends, it's time away from friends and family. So you've got to be prepared to do the graft, and you've got to know your stuff as well. I think, across the board, the fundamental thing for any reporter is having the knowledge of the subject that you're talking about. So when I first started working as a pit lane reporter, I had no television experience. The reason ITV approached me was because I knew the sport, I knew the people in the sport, so I knew what to ask and when to ask it. I think that's the bottom line. You've got to know your stuff if you want to be taken seriously.
Lou, when it comes to working in WEC, how does it work? Can you give people an insight into how you go about getting interviews, how you make packages? What's a normal, there's no such thing as normal, is there, in our industry, but what's a day like for you?
God, I don't know, everyone's different, every day's different. For me, you've got to obviously find those stories, or you've got to talk to everyone, so you have to befriend everyone in that paddock. You need to know what's going on in their lives, maybe outside of their lives as well. I don't know, so being friendly and speaking to everyone is a massive. What would I say my normal day is? I have to find the stories. So I need to, when we're not on a race, I need to see what's going on with a team, with a driver, and then I go to my team and I'll tell them the things that I want to find out or explore some more about.
Yeah, I think it is a full-on role, isn't it? It encompasses a lot of things. Lots of your questions starting to come in, which is excellent. And a couple of them have a very similar theme, Natalie, which is how do you manage a relationship with people in the paddock? Because it is hard. You're asking some very difficult questions at times, at some horrible moments, but yet you've got to make sure it works as a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were going to say, how do you manage a relationship with your husband? Because I think that is the hardest thing.
You don't. They just stay at home. You park them outside and dust them off when you come home.
Absolutely. Mine's just out of earshot, so thank you. It's an interesting one, because you don't want to cross the line where you're too pally. I think it alienates your audience if you're too in with them and you refer to each other in nicknames. Suddenly people feel like they're encroaching on your conversation. But equally, relationships are everything in life. If people don't trust you, then they're not going to open up to you either. And I think the important thing is that You need to remember you're the conduit for the fans. People don't actually care about your opinion as a pit lane reporter or a presenter. You are there to facilitate and to ask the questions those at home want answering. And I think it's a trap that perhaps, particularly as females, we can fall into, where we want to prove our worth and our knowledge and justify our position, because perhaps we do still operate in a predominantly man's world. So what we do is we often load up our questions with stats, and we'll say, well, did you notice on the 57th lap that you started to lose, your tyres started to laminate, or whatever it is. And actually, all they want is a sense of the human being that you're talking to. They want to know how they're feeling in that moment, and they will tell you the details. So I think if you develop relationships of trust, you don't stitch anyone up, you don't go for a quick sell and a quick headline. You actually go for the long game of understanding them, because they are human beings at the end of the day. And probably the last thing that they feel like is your microphone shoved under their nose when they've just crashed out of a race. So they've got to like you and trust you, and don't push it. Don't be a smart ass. Don't be a know-it-all. No chance of that with me. And just talk to them as a human being to a human being.
Has anyone had it? Oh, Lou, you want to come in?
Yeah, I was going to say, and on top of that is timing, isn't it? If someone's come in and they've crashed out, you can't always go bulldozing in. You've got to sometimes step back and see what's going on and look at the bigger picture before you step in and talk to them, because actually you'll get something better once they've had a breather and had time to digest what's happened.
You want that raw reaction and the raw emotion, but you don't want to compromise them, because then they won't trust you again going forward.
Exactly.
And you will know that. You will know when you burn bridges with people, it's difficult to come back from. So it is a constant management of relationships. Of that, there's no doubt. But I think that's life generally, isn't it? It's about being perceptive and understanding of people.
I think I'd add to that, yeah, exactly. It's that fine balance, isn't it? You don't want to ruin your relationships, but at the end of the day, you're there to tell the story, and you're there to unpick the things that those team principals don't want to talk about, or the drivers don't want to talk about, and they would quite happily avoid. So you've kind of always got to go in with that second or third question that they're going to be wincing at answering, but your job there is to get the answers out of them. So it is very much a fine balance. And I think reacting in the heat of a moment is always a difficult one. And actually, one thing to say, you mentioned you're not there as a friend, you are there just to report on what's going on. So I think you've also got to take however they react to you being there at a time that they're feeling very emotional. Again, just put that to the side. I've had drivers who've been horrendously rude, and I know that that's not a personal attack on me. I think the first time it happened, I was a bit speechless, because I was relatively new to the job and I didn't quite know what to say back. But, again, with experience, you realize if someone's asking you those questions at a time where your emotions are heightened, you're angry, you might have missed out on an important win through a mistake that has been made by one of your competitors. And so your emotions are running wild, and then you've got someone shoving a camera in your face and a microphone trying to probe and get all those answers out of you. It must be infuriating. I'd hate it personally. So I think there's something to be said that don't take it too personally if they can be a little bit aggressive in the answer.
Louise, let's go to Louise Goodman.
Well, I was just going to add in, just to following up on what both Nat and Nicki have said, about building those relationships. And I think once you've got those relationships with people, it enables you, their different characters, the drivers that are going to go bang at you straight away. The drivers who actually just want to deal with it and then be done with it. The drivers who need to go away, collect themselves, have a think about it, and then they will be in a better position to give you a better quote. So those relationships that everybody's touched on, it really helps you to know the people and to know how to approach the people, because sometimes you're treading a difficult path with them at difficult times. So it's about picking your right moment, and if you pick the right moment, that's when you're going to get the better quote.
And it's so true that I think because the press generally, you've got the print press, you've got television, radio, you've got so many people all jostling for position and asking questions. I think it's crucial for them to know that you aren't looking to trip them up as such. You just want the truth. And you're not tricking anyone. You are just, again, acting as the middleman between the fan and the driver.
I think you touched on it before. It's about them trusting you, and you have to build up that trust so they know that you're going to maybe ask difficult questions, but you don't want to put them in a really horrible position.
Not all the time, anyway.
Not all the time.
Right, more questions coming in. Thank you so much. Remember the Q&A function down at the bottom of the screen. Simra and a few other people actually have asked this question. How do you get over your nerves when you first start out? Nicki, let's come to you first.
I always think there's an element there. I love the nerves. Like, the nerves is what makes me love my job. It gives you that kind of adrenaline. There's nothing really that can prepare for that other than experience. I would say, you know, the more you do it, the more practice you have, the less nervous you are. And I would say, you know, if this is a sort of a job that you really want to aspire to get into doing, then, you know, practice at home or go to a racetrack, practice, take your mum down, take your dad down, take your mates down, practice doing it to a phone. It doesn't matter if there isn't any, in fact, if there's like one person watching or 30 million people watching, it doesn't really matter. You still want to do just as good a job. So I think the more practice you have, the more relaxed you'll be, and hopefully less nervous you'll be. And again, you know, back to what Louise was saying earlier about having knowledge. If you have the knowledge, if you've done your research, if you know everything there is to know about the drivers, about the racing, about the track, you will go in feeling so confident that nothing, hopefully nothing, maybe a rude driver, but nothing should get in the way of, you know, you being able to sort of deliver what you need to do to get the job done properly. So I think, yeah, proper research, feeling confident will take away some of that nerves, but you don't want to get rid of it all the time because it's a bit fun. You can't beat live television.
Well, exactly. Lou Goodman, you do media training as well now. What would you say to people who come to you and saying, I'm just so nervous, I can't quite get over that level of nerves?
I tend to be dealing with people who are on the receiving end of what we do. So I'm working with racing drivers, with people within teams, and with people in the business community as well, who are going to be front facing to the media. But I basically tell that it's a variation on the theme of what we do. Understand what you're walking into. So understand the environment that you're walking into, so that you know how to approach a live interview, how that's slightly different to approaching a pre-recorded interview. So that's knowledge of the kind of industry and the way that the media work. But then knowledge on your topic, again, it's exactly the same thing. Know the questions that are going to come up, know the tricky questions that might come up, know how you're going to approach them. So it all comes down to as I say, exactly the same thing, whether it's us asking the questions or the people on the receiving end of the questions. Have the knowledge and understanding of the environment that you're in and the topic that you're covering.
Now, there are times when you can have knowledge, understanding, all of the sort of weapons in your arsenal that you could want. But Natalie, there are times when you have to speak to someone like Kimi Räikkönen. And Delilah has got in touch. I hope that's how you say her name. I apologise if it's slightly different. But how do you handle drivers like Kimi who don't really say much?
I think, first of all, don't take it personally, because he does do it to everyone. Second of all, remember, he is just another human being. I find that Kimi is much better away from a track. There's something about being at the track that inhibits him, that he's like, oh, I've heard every question imaginable. Don't ask me something stupid. Actually, my breakthrough with Kimi was when I crashed his car on ice. And I wrote his car off, and he clearly thought that was hilarious. It's the first time I've ever heard him laugh, but proper belly laugh. And then every time I saw him in the pen afterwards, he'd sort of like be walking around the pen, and then he'd look up and say, "Oh yeah, that's the girl that crashed my car." And it was, something of a breakthrough. But look, don't be under any illusions. He is what he is, and in a way, there's a certain charm to that. He's a bit of an icon as a result. I think the girls have already said it. Knowledge is everything. It's what gives you the confidence. If you're scrapping around in your head trying to think of your next question, first of all, you're not concentrating on what they're saying. The most important thing is to ask them something based on their answer, so that you engage in a conversation. I can't stand it on telly when I just know that people are just running through the questions they pre-prepared in their head, because it means they're not engaged with their subject. And if you've got knowledge in your field of work, then you can go off at different tangents and you can ask them a different question depending on their answer. Alternative to all of that is the old one of just imagine they're naked, because that works every time.
I think I'd be more
driver, doesn't it?
What's that?
Really, that depends on the driver.
Well, I mean, but that's what can make you laugh, you know.
Oh, I think that would put me off quite a few.
Again, but it will stop the nerves, won't it?
I've never tried that one. I might try that one.
Oh, Luke, you've got to add this into your media training, because I want to say it at live events as well. You know, you go out and there's like, I actually love a live audience in the room almost more than the camera, because I love to get interaction going with them. But the minute I picture them naked, I just laugh and relax. And actually, do you know what? I know a lot of people watching this will be too young to be mums, but I do think a lot changed for me when I became a mother, because I realised it is just television. You know, at the end of the day, most of the viewers are on your side. And if you admit to, you know, we all make mistakes. And if you just go, God, I'm really sorry, you know, it's a bad day or whatever. And actually, it doesn't matter. It drops down your priority list and you suddenly relax more and you, I think, get better at your role. But I remember once a driver that will remain nameless came into the pen, and he can be tricky. Jen's going to work out who I'm talking about here. But he came into the pen and and I don't know if you ever get this, Jen, or any of you with the drivers, but if the cameras haven't been really focusing on the driver that's in front of you, you're suddenly thinking, what the hell happened in their race? You haven't actually, you're thinking, oh my God. And then you think of, like, ask a generic question, you're going through your notes like this. And anyway, he came straight to me and I went like this, and I was thinking, I just had a complete blank on his race because he'd had a pretty non-eventful one. And he went, are you not ready for me? And then he sort of turned on his heel and walked off. And I was pretty hormonal because I'd just given birth to Willow, and I started to well up. And then he came back, and I just said, you know what? I'm just gonna level with you. I don't really want to be here right now, being blown out by drivers like you, and I'm trying really hard. So please be nice to me, like that. And then he went, oh, I'm really sorry. And I went, that's okay, I'm sorry for crying. And then that was it. He was never mean to me again. Because I think, again, you kind of connect as human beings as opposed to me doing a job, him doing a job. We're all just trying to get on in life, aren't we? And also it helped that he's got a kid. So Jen's going, But my point is, again, it's that human connection, isn't it? And not trying to pretend you know it all, because none of us do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all had those embarrassing moments, haven't we? Which I think it's probably a good time to go whip around the room and just talk embarrassing moments, because Natalie, that must have been a fairly uncomfortable moment for you, but I'm sure we've all got moments we'd love to talk about. Lou is ready to go. Lou Goodman, fire away.
Come on, Lulu.
My classic embarrassing moment was an interview with DC, who can be, or certainly could be, when he was a driver. You were never quite sure what you were going to get with DC, and it was a sort of a live interview going into the top of the Canadian Grand Prix. And I was going to ask him, he'd mucked up at the previous race. He basically failed to press the pit lane speed limiter button in the cockpit. And as a result of that, he was fined for speeding in the pit lane. And that effectively threw away what would have been Red Bull's first ever podium finish. So it was a fairly kind of, touchy thing. So I thought, I'm just going to, because DC can be a bit prickly, I'm just going to warn him in advance that this question is coming, so that he's huge mistake. Because of course, DC can also be a little tinker, to put it politely. So he decided that he was going to come back at me. So I said to him, what happened, problem with the pit lane speed limiter, and he live on air said, oh yeah, I've been practicing, I've been pretending it's your nipple and caressing it gently. So, and all I could hear, obviously we, when we're working, we've got earphones in, so we can hear the director, everybody else, all the producers in the gallery, and I just heard these guffaws of laughter coming out, and I was just so gobsmacked. I think I said, oh, back to you, Jim. I just didn't know how to respond to it. So yeah, so that was, and then that became, we actually ended up on page 3 of the Sun with, you know, the sort of comments
What, your
about
nipple or just the comment?
the comment.
Okay, good. Go.
And
Clarify that.
I had so many, and it was actually quite a tricky path to walk thereafter, because
Yeah.
I just knew this was DC, being DC, mucking about, and this was a bloke that I'd known ever since he first came into the Formula One paddock. But obviously, you know, and it's become even more so, that's a very, you know, out there kind of comment to make. It's not really, so I had a lot of people who were very offended on my behalf getting in contact, and so I had to kind of walk the line between, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but he was just doing DC, being a bit of a dick and mucking about kind of thing. So so that was probably that was an embarrassing moment, because obviously it was something very personal that he was saying. I didn't know where to go with it, so I just kind of you know, afterwards, 5 minutes later, you think of 101 witty retorts to come back with, but that's the one that always springs to mind for me.
Well, it will spring to our minds now every time we see DC. Well, think of nipples. Brilliant. Lou Beckett.
How on earth do I follow that?
I don't know. Can you top trump a nipple?
No, I really can't. I've got an embarrassing one when I first started. But I mean, it's nothing about nipples, so it's going to be really flat. So when I first did an endurance race, Alan McNish was still driving, and he came second. We were at Spa, and I chased him up those awful metal stairs to follow him to get the interview as he's going to the podium, I think. And I'm like, oh yeah, great race. And he just turned around and went, well, I started on pole and I finished second, so not really. Then
we've all had those moments, haven't you, when you've just gone, oh, so that must have, and you've read it wrong. You've just got it, because there's so much going on as a pit lane reporter. You're not sitting in a grandstand with a notebook, making beautiful notes about everything that's happened with all the information that people have at home. Fans have so much resource. They can see lap charts, they can see Twitter, they can see all of these things. And you're normally stood in the rain in a pit lane with no monitor. You can't see the race. You don't have an understanding of the race, which makes it really challenging not to ask exactly the wrong question. Nicki.
No, I just think that is such a good point, Jenny, that we haven't really mentioned. It's like we're expected to have been able to see everything that everyone else gets. And you don't. You're running around in the back of the garage trying to find out what the story is that happened on lap 3. By the time you find out what's happened, you're already on lap 10. So you've missed, you know, a decent chunk of the race. And that just sort of happens again and again. So there are so many, or there's a big crash and you're about to go and do an interview and you're like, but I haven't seen a replay. I don't know what happened in the crash. You're sort of like trying to say to a producer, can you tell me what happened in the crash? Please, someone explain. But sometimes there isn't time and you have to go straight into an interview completely blind after a big crash that you've never seen. And it can be really difficult not to sound completely stupid, because obviously the viewer at home has seen it once, they've seen the replays. I mean, it's not always the case, but it can be the case, that's for sure. But I'm trying to think of embarrassing moments, other than like, drivers just being rude. I mean, one thing that did stand out was when we were in Paris for the first Formula E race, or the first Formula E race in Paris. It was a really big moment, talked about it a lot. We were going to have the French Prime Minister there on the grid. A lot had gone into preparing and getting this interview lined up. We had to be there like bang on time. Obviously the grid is super, super busy. We can't find him. We're running around. It's got to start in like 30 seconds. Where the heck is he? Finally, he's there. Peg it over. Get to him, start the interview with my first question, and his reply is in French. And I don't speak French.
Oh.
So I can hear Mike in my ear. I'll do something like, sorry, Nicki, you're on your own here. We don't know what. And well, actually, he didn't say that initially. He actually started to pretend to translate. Turns out he didn't actually know what he was saying. He was just completely making it up as a bit of a joke. Oh, great, he's translating. And then he told me that actually he had no idea what he was saying. So I then had to go in with the second question, having no idea what he just said, and then thanked him politely in English. So passed it off to Jack. And actually, fortunately, Jack does speak a little bit of French. So I think he kind of summarized it.
Love that. Funnily enough, Nadine has been in touch saying, does knowing many languages, does that mean it's good for a media job? I know Arabic, English, French, German and Russian. So I think we can probably say from that, yes, the more languages you can speak, the better it will be. Natalie Pinkham.
Well, this actually segues very nicely to my most embarrassing story, all about Lost in Translation, was when I first interviewed Fernando Alonso. And I do speak Spanish, but clearly not well enough, because any Spanish speakers listening to this will attest that if you want to say with me, the literal translation is con with yo, me. But actually, if you say coño quickly, it means the C word. So I said, so what you have to do is you have to say conmigo. And I said, una entrevista, coño. And basically saying, how about an interview, you? What I should have said was, una entrevista conmigo. Anyway, he burst out laughing and he goes, you know, I don't think you meant to call me. And I went bright red. I was literally, I mean, look, all the Spanish speaking are like messaging now, going, ah! I was like, there was me trying to be clever. Oh, I know what, I'll speak Spanish to Fernando Alonso. That'll go down well. Oh, no, not if you drop the C-bomb, it won't. So that was it.
I'm wondering how heavily I'll have to edit this for them.
But I didn't say it. I just...
No, it's fine.
Beep, 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 beep. I did say it on the day, though, to him. Again, it was a bit of an icebreaker. And then every time I saw him afterwards, it's like, there's the Conyo girl. Yeah, good.
Yeah, that'll do it. Well, if you're worried, Lou, about trying to follow that and the nipple story, I'm not even going to try and follow Pinkham's. That's just too horrific to even try and follow.
I mean, it is pretty horrific, isn't it? Calling world champion the C-bomb. Lovely.
I think you have to be prepared. Someone asked about improv. Where are you? I know you asked and I can't find it. I'm really sorry. But somebody, here we go. Jack Pickering asked about how much you have to improvise in the pit lane. And I would say just with those situations, you do try and improv. You do try and kind of bust it and make sure it works and make it flowing and make it fun and funny and engaging. And sometimes you can go very off-piste and go very wrong. And you then have to, if you're live, bring it back, which can be a very hard thing to do, especially if you're both in fits of giggles. And it's called corpsing. And I can think of so many times, especially working with Jack Nicholls, which Nicki has the pleasure of doing on a more regular basis than I do. But you just end up laughing a lot. And whilst it can be really fun and funny, actually, like you said, Natalie, at the beginning, it can be very in and it can exclude everybody else. So you have to find a balance and you have to be able to speak after it. I'm really bad with innuendos. Especially on the radio, you constantly have to speak. You can't have dead air. So when I'm doing a grid walk and I'm trying to find somebody, my most classic one, they played it on Radio 1, was I was trying to find Manisha Kaltenborn on the grid. And it's so busy. And I'm looking around, I can't see her anywhere. I'm talking all the time, filling airspace. I've got my producer rattling on in my ear. I thought he's trying to tell me where Monisha is. No, not at all, just talking rubbish. And so I'm going past Kamui Kobayashi and I walk past him while still looking for Monisha and talking. And I say, and I'm just walking past Kamui Kobayashi in his shiny red helmet. What have I just said? So yeah, there are words in motorsport that don't help you. Helmet is one of them. Lou.
I had a very similar experience. I was one of the jobs I do in the touring car races. So the drivers all come into Parc Ferme and they get out of their cars and do the celebrations, and then sort of at the appropriate moment, I'm listening for the throw. So the commentators will say, right now, Louise is with the drivers, let's go down to. They threw down to me a bit early, so I didn't have the winning driver. The winning driver was Jason Plato. So I am exactly the same as you, Jenny, having to fill that dead time. You're just on the hoof, having to make stuff up. So I came out with the classic show, and I didn't even know that I'd done it at the time. It was only afterwards, because you don't really know what you're saying sometimes. You've got so much noise in your ear with people talking to you. You're trying to suss so much out. So I came out with the classic line, and there's Jason's mother's kissing his helmet. And as I say, I didn't even notice, but it was actually Jason's father who came up to me straight afterwards, just doubled up with laughter. He thought it was Tim Plato. He just thought it was absolutely hysterical. So I still get ribbed about that one on a regular basis.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Right, let's try and get back to some of your Q&A questions. Paige says, hi, everybody. Would you suggest LinkedIn or emailing people in the industry is a productive way of networking? And a lot of questions we are getting are about how best do I meet people? Do I contact anybody? Do I get my foot in the door, basically? And especially in COVID times, it's really difficult. Natalie, when it comes to people getting their foot in the door, I suppose at Sky, everyone assumes there must be loads of opportunities to get loads of work experience, but it's not always the way.
Yeah, it's really tricky, particularly at the moment with COVID. We've had a complete freeze on that. And actually, I have to say, Sky is such an aspirational place. They're always giving young people chances. And I made a commitment to myself, because I remember being, at that stage when you're just leaving uni and you're trying to just do anything to break in. And I remember saying that whoever contacts me, I will help, because I know how hard it is. So now I'm gonna get loads of messages now, like but and there's only so much some people can do. But one bit of advice that I got, which I always stand by, is that if you do like anything you see on television, for example, a documentary or whatever, wait to the credits, see who's produced it, and contact them. You can normally work out the generic email or going online and just say, look, I loved what you did. Everyone loves a bit of flattery. I love what you did. Tell them why you're passionate about it. Can I just come and see you for a cup of tea? Can I come and work for you? Can I do some work experience, work for nothing? Be the first in, the last out. Just show your passion and your commitment, and never be scared of hard work, because there's no substitute for it. And if you throw yourself into it, I think that gets you a long way. But of course, that initial breakthrough is very hard. And I've always said that F1 is very hard to get into, but once you're there, it is a meritocracy. You do get the opportunity to flourish, that you do have the support. There's a lot of very decent people within the sport. But yeah, that initial breakthrough, particularly at the moment, is hard. But don't give up, because if you're passionate about it, that passion will take you a long way.
Well, as I said at the beginning, I've started up Loudspeaker Agency. And this is exactly one of the reasons why not everyone has that channel of how to get in, or even maybe the confidence to do that themselves. So I've seen this gap in the market. Myself and Gemma Scott have set up this agency where we can help new talent. We can nurture them a bit, because being a freelancer also is really lonely. It's quite hard work. So you need someone that you can just bounce off or just throw some ideas around.
Absolutely. Cassia has been in touch saying, and I think this is all a subject matter close to our heart, do girls have to try harder, work harder, do more and prove more at the beginning that this is also a place for women? Did somebody treat you unfairly or without respect at any point in your career? So I pick off which bit you want of that. I think most of us are ambassadors for Girls on Track. Lou Beckett, are you an ambassador?
I've worked with them, yeah.
Yeah. So we all kind of have that cause close to our hearts. Lou, tell me, what have you found? What's it like being a female in motorsport?
I think that it's a double-edged sword, actually, because I think maybe we'd all be honest and say an element of why we're here is because we're females. There's no denying that. But you have to prove yourself. You have to be true to you and strong in what you believe in and you know of your own ability, to not let all of that get in. You have to have this hard shell, really, to not let it affect you.
Lou, you were one of the first females really as a pit lane reporter and led the way for so many of us, which we are entirely grateful for. But was it harder when you first started out, or was it easier?
The benefit for me was that I was already working in Formula One. As I mentioned earlier on, I wasn't employed because I knew anything about broadcasting, because I didn't really have a clue. I'd done a couple of little bits for RTE Irish television, little reports from the Jordan garage, but that was the sum total of my experience. So I was employed yes, because ITV wanted to have a female on the team to reflect, and rightly so, to reflect the demographic of people who were watching and are watching the sport. You know, girls, in my experience, are as passionate, and in some cases more passionate. I think fans feel that they have to prove that they know more about the sport, to prove that they're fans of the sport. So yes, I was employed because I was female, but it was because of the knowledge that I had. You know, the guys I was working with knew everything about broadcasting. They needed people who knew about the sport, so they took me. They took James Allen again, who'd come from the paddock. They took Martin Brundle, Murray. The presentation team was full of people who were already working in the sport, because that's what they wanted from us. So that was really, it was a mixture of the two. It was my knowledge, and yes, can't deny it, they wanted a female on the screen, and they chose me for that job.
Let's go to Natalie next, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is a hard one, because, you know, even now we've only got 4 female members on the Sky team, and that includes one producer and the travel coordinator, and then it's me and Rachel, and that's not enough. And I know that Sky are making strides to improve that, and the sport isn't doing enough yet. Well, I say they're not doing enough. The sport is definitely doing more now than they ever have, and but we are still 88% male and 91% white, and that's not acceptable in 2021. And so, you know, when I see that the audience is 48% female, I mean, that's astonishing, isn't it? That many women are watching the sport. But they need relatable role models, not just in our roles, but all through the sport. They need to be able to see female faces up and down the paddock in every single job description there's going. And then ultimately, there's no reason why there won't be a female driver within our lifetimes who's standing on the top of the podium. I can't wait for it, but we have to keep pushing. And I'm really proud of the work that Sky and Formula One are doing in that respect. There's webinars like this are really important, so thank you, Jen. It's so important. And by the way, congratulations on the Drive to Survive announcement today.
Thanks.
Brilliant, but absolutely brilliant. We need female voices on these shows that are going global, and they need to see that there are strong women in the sport who know what they're talking about, are hugely passionate about what they do, are juggling a huge amount in order to be there, and we love what we do, and we're very, very lucky. We are a lucky few, but hopefully we'll pave the way for many more to come. I really hope that my daughter will grow up believing she's got exactly the same opportunities as her brother, and I think it's starting to go that way. There's a great woman in Formula One who you'll know, Ellie Norman, who's really passionate about improving diversity in the sport. And of course, Lewis Hamilton's doing the same, not just about your ethnicity, but about your sexual orientation, about your gender, about everything, just making it a real cross-section and reflective representative of society as a whole. So I think we're getting there. Was that the question? I can't remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
You nailed the answer. Everyone's applauding you. So great. What I would say is right now there's a real movement to try and find new talent. And I'm sure, Lou, you're seeing this as well, is that we need more females. We need more diversity, a greater cross-section of humanity in the paddock, because as Nat says, it is still predominantly white male arena. And Lou, what would you say if people are watching this and they happen to be in a bracket where they go, actually, yes, I can bring something a little bit different? It is going to be hard at the moment if you are, let's say, a 30-year-old male wanting to get into motorsport, because actually the doors are being opened for different people.
Yeah, they absolutely are. I do also, though, believe that your talent and your knowledge will see you through. So yes, I'll go back to the female bit. Yes, we're females, but we have to stand our ground. And that goes across actually everybody in the industry now, or anybody trying to get into the industry. You've still got to have that knowledge about you and that strength.
And also to add to that, I think it's, you know, as a female in a man's dominated world at the moment, you've just got to always watch your guard and remain professional at all times, because you are being judged. You know, you can't sort of, it's very easy to become too friendly, I think, in the paddock, because you want to build those relationships, but it's important you've got to maintain your professional distance at all time, because otherwise you're not going to be perceived as, you know, being professional. And also just wanted to add back, because I know we're going to run out of time quite soon, just on the when you were talking about how to get into the industry, about emailing and getting in touch with as many people as you can. And, you know, it's not just the one production company, it's all the teams, it's the sponsors. There's many production companies involved in lots of different elements of each motorsport category. There's agencies, there's sponsorship, there's lots of different ways to get into the industry. So, you know, don't feel that you've only got, if you've tried with one or two teams, then it's a no. You know, I always say you've got to just be in lots of places, lots of times, and then you'll be in the right place at the right time, you know. And if you don't get a response to an email, don't be disheartened. Unfortunately, people are super busy, and it's not a personal reflection that they're not interested in helping you. They probably just have a gazillion other emails that they've got to get through on that day. And unfortunately, you're not their priority. But it doesn't mean that you can't send them a polite reminder email to just say, just to let you know I'm here. Just thought I'd update you. This is what I've been doing to be proactive. You know, I went to this event. I've written up this race report. You know, you might not have a platform to put it onto, but you're just doing it for fun. Or start, you know, get involved in a Facebook community group, or set up something with your friends if, you know, you've got a sort of group amongst you who are all also interested in motorsport. There are lots of ways to start being proactive without necessarily going to work on Sky Sports F1 as your first job. You know, you've all got to start somewhere, and just, again, building that experience is going to be crucial. And just, you know, just keep checking in with people, and just don't take it personally initially if you don't hear back. But people do, and on the whole, people are really keen to help and really open to find proactive, keen, passionate, young, enthusiastic talent. So yeah, good luck.
It's so true, Nicki, because no one's ever going to criticize you for being persistent. No one's going to go, oh, do you know, I'm not going to give them a job because they're trying too hard. Yeah. Everyone wants to see a bit of tenacity, don't they? And also, we're never going to improve the amount of women in the sport. We're never going to bump that up unless people are applying for it. But that's what I mean when I talk about relatable role models. Women have to feel, young girls have to feel that it is a viable career option for them, that they're watching the telly and they've got people they can emulate on it. So this is why the onus is on us at the moment to pave the way for future generations, and to say, actually, you know, you can do this. There's nothing to stop you. And actually, it's something that I know all of you are passionate about, and I certainly am. We need to shine the light on the great women in the sport already, whether they be aerodynamicists or engineers or catering, whatever element of the sport it is, to say, look, come this way, choose a STEM subject at school, university, and start working towards the career that you long for.
I think you're right, Natalie, that and Nicki, you said it as well. Your dad took you to races. I grew up around cars, racing tracks, everything. And I actually didn't even think twice about entering into motorsport. It didn't even come into my mind that there was a male-female divide.
Well, that's great. I mean, that is, yeah, it's all about perception then, isn't it? You know, you grew up in that environment, so other girls need to feel that it is attainable. We should definitely.
I never realised, sorry, talking over you there now, I never realised how important that was. When I first started working in Formula One, there were very few women in there. And I can remember, you know, at the start of my ITV days, our producer, Neil Duncanson, noticed that there was a girl working as an engineer with Jagger, and he said, oh, let's do a piece. And I went, no, don't make anything, but, you know, I was really keen to, you know, don't make me stand out here. I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to be one of the boys, kind of thing. I've come full circle on that one. Now I know now 100%, and some of that has come from people saying to me, oh my God, I remember when I first saw you on the television, I thought, oh, that's something I could do. I now 100% appreciate the importance of that visibility, the whole see it to be it thing. And I think just to add something into what Nicki was saying as well about, well, what everybody said about, you know, how to get into the pit lane. I think it's important to, I was going to say don't aim too high, but don't think you're going to walk in to the Formula One pit lane as a reporter for Sky straight away. I think, go to your local racetrack and actually meet some people, volunteer for some teams. There's so much going on, sort of audiovisual stuff. Teams are recording things, they're making podcasts. That's how you can get some experience. Offer up your services. And what that does is it gets you in on the inside and you make the all-important contacts with other people who are working in that industry. So it's so much of it. It's, yes, we've all talked about, it's what you've got to know your stuff, but it's about who you know as well. So it's about making those contacts and asking the questions and offering yourself up, getting that experience, so that when Sky are looking for somebody to join their team, which clearly won't be for a long time, Nat, because they're
listen, I'm all for it. I am all for. I genuinely thrive. Nicki and I have talked about this a lot. I just get such energy off panels like this. I just love seeing females. I feel energized when I see them in the paddock. I want more, not less. And, make it an all-female team. Look, I mean, what's great actually about the W Series coming on to the F1 calendar is that they are going to be mixing in the paddock with Formula One personnel. And I think that's really important as well, to get more female faces out there. And just, Jen, let's do one of these again soon, because I think they're brilliant. And I certainly feel buoyed by it afterwards.
It's so funny because I think people on the outside have a very different interpretation of what our lives are like. They must think that we all hate each other and that we're all rivals and that we're all in a pen, like pushing each other around and jostling. And yes, there are times when you do need to be first for a story and you've got pressure on you from above and all of that gets bubbling up. But actually, we're all quite matey with each other because you're traveling a lot, you're on the road, you need your girls around you.
Definitely.
You need a team of support around you. So yes, we're not anti each other. We all want each other to succeed. And the more we can champion each other, the better all of our lives will be.
100%. We raise our game with other talent around. And I've always believed that, you become a better version of yourself if you're pushed by your peers. Competition is so healthy, but also having a sort of sisterhood, we do raise each other up. And I think, that goes across every aspect of life. If you think about when you're at your strongest, it's when you've got your pals around you, isn't it?
Who would
I
you
can't remember.
Dinner party with? Your girl mates, or be the only girl with a bunch of men? Not a chance. So nice walking into a paddock and just seeing so many women, and then also the girl, you go out, well, normally you can give them a big hug and you can and also that's how you find out the behind the scenes gossip about what's happening between the drivers and the team principals. So it is brilliant. I mean, we've been really lucky in Formula E. So we have a production manager called Laura, and it's been her like ultimate mission to get more women in production. And actually she's done so well. We've now got 20 women in the production team. And when I first started, we had 2.
That's amazing, isn't it?
So
amazing.
Yeah. So that's I mean, they don't obviously all travel to every race, but like my film manager, producer, production manager, their assistants, they're all women. So it's
incredible. And we do need strong allies. That's one of the things I think the last year has taught us. Look, we're going to run out of time. I know Lou has somewhere to go. I know the other Lou has somewhere to go. Very important. So before we leave this, I just want to whip round really and just get a final nugget for everybody, for what you think, for an advice, for just something you can leave people with before we wrap this meeting up. So Lou Beckett, do you want to go first?
I think that a lot of people have said it already, is be open to any opportunities. So look at all angles. Don't think that you're just going to go straight in at the top. Look at how you can help people along the way to just open that door.
Nicki.
I would say, just don't give up, stay focused, make sure you're doing this because you're passionate about the sport. It is not glamorous, it is hard work, but you will find something. There is a role and a position for everyone if you really are a hard worker. And be kind and be nice to people in the job, because you never know who is going to become your boss one day.
We haven't even talked about how unglamorous this job is when we're all looking relatively glam today, because we're not windswept, rained upon with smudged mascara running down our faces. Natalie always looks good, whatever happens.
Watch it back and you're like, why did nobody tell me?
Why did nobody tell me?
Working with men.
Yeah,
When this happened.
totally. Yeah, Nats.
Yes, absolutely. Consume everything around you in terms of knowledge. Listen to podcasts, read as much as you can, be curious, be determined, and don't drop the C-bomb.
That'll get clipped up. Love it. Lou.
I think my advice to women looking to work in this role is have the courage of your convictions. I think it's it's well documented that women tend to undersell themselves and men oversell themselves when they're going into sort of a competitive environment. So absolutely have the courage of your convictions. If you know your stuff, you've as much right there to be there as anybody. So don't undersell yourself. And
I would say fight. Don't fight each other, but fight to get to where you want to be. So, for example, with Drive to Survive, they got two guys in Series 1 who looked almost identical to each other. From the whole paddock, they had to choose, and they chose two guys who were almost identical. And I went up to them and I just said, come on, this is a really good opportunity to show that there are men, there are women, there are different people in this paddock. We're not all the same. And with so few women in the sport, you've got a responsibility to put one of them on your show. I don't care who it is, pick anyone, but pick one. So for me today is like a real breakthrough moment. So yeah, I don't need to congratulate myself, but you just have to fight for what you really want in life. And whether it be motorsport or, I don't know, owning a dog like Lou or whatever it may be, go out there and just do it. And that's all we've got time for. I'll just chunter away to myself for the rest of the day. But ladies, thank you so much for being part of the panel. I hope you enjoyed the experience. And as Natalie said, let's do it again. Let's try and bring more people into the sport.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lovely to see everybody. I've missed everyone.
Yeah, it's so nice to see everybody. Thank you to you at home for watching. Thanks to our sponsors as well, New Channel Media, without who we could not do these webinars. So I'm forever grateful to them. And to the ladies of the pit lane, thanks for your advice. And we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.